let's move on to Liverpool's attacking edition, which is Diogo Jota. Now, like I said, I think a lot of people have thought of me as kind of the Liverpool naysayer, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I just think that sometimes you want to say there's this little cause for concern here, and it's just something the club need to be aware of. And I think that attacking depth has been that thing for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I've never been the biggest fan of Origi, though he certainly has some clutch goals on his CV. But they added Minamino in January, and now they've added Diogo Jota, which is really the first big attacking signing they've made since Mo Salah. It looks like he's going to cost around 50 million euros, 45 million pounds in the end. That includes add-ons. He turns 24 in December. But last season, he got a bit of criticism, didn't he, Dukes? Like, it didn't seem like he'd necessarily pushed on from the season before when you looked at the raw goal and assist numbers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he only got 8 goals and assists last season compared to 14 the year before. But for me, I think it's a slight overpay. I probably wouldn't have paid as much, but I think he's an excellent player. And I actually think he's a big step up on Ismaila Sarr as well. As much as I like Ismaila Sarr, I think he's got quite a bit more developing to do.
Well, certainly when they were talking about 36 mil for Sarr, you think, Jota for 45.
Yeah, exactly. And Sarr had effectively 10 or 12 sort of really strong games between November and February. But either side, his goal involvements were pretty minimal, albeit in a very poor Watford side, whereas Jota's playing, obviously, for a much better side and a much better system under a much better manager. But I really like Diogo Jota. He can play in a number of positions. He can play on the right, he can play left, he can play more centrally as well. He's very direct, he's really committed. I think he works exceptionally hard as well. His pressures are always really high. I think they were up at 23 per game last year, which was higher than all Liverpool's forwards. I mean, Firmino was the top on 21. And I think a lot of Liverpool fans would be like, you know, why didn't we use this money and get Timo Werner? Well, I think the logic of Klopp was that Timo Werner would come in and, having contributed, 30 plus league goals last year, he would demand minutes. He would demand to start. Whereas Diogo Jota, I saw Rory Smith put it out on Twitter, who works for the New York Times. I actually think he's a very good journalist. He put on Twitter, he's that Goldilocks signing, because he's perfect in that he'll be able to contribute when he's playing, but he's not the big enough name that he'll demand minutes, he'll kick up a fuss. He'll be delighted to be at Liverpool. He's joining one of the best clubs in the world. And I think he's ready to contribute quite regularly, to be fair. I can see him swapping in and out with Mane for sort of easier Premier League games, Cup games, Champions League games, and also Salah as well, and could also do a job centrally, although the system would have to change quite dramatically if he was replacing Firmino. So I really like Diogo Jota, and I think it's a great move for him and a sensible one, if a slight overpay from Liverpool.
Do you think that this potentially means that one of the forwards will be sold next summer?
I think they're basically planning. It's always good to plan for the worst in any walk of life, really. Always assume the worst. It's the same as when you're driving. You've got to assume that anyone's about to hit you in your car. And I think Liverpool are doing that with this signing as well. They're assuming that Mane, Salah, I think particularly Salah will be hot property next summer. Although it's quite difficult to see where he'd go, to be fair, because I don't think he's going to go to Barcelona. I think Real Madrid are really doing this Project Mbappe thing. I think they've got that nailed to their mast now. So I'm not quite sure where they're going to go. And if they don't go, great for Liverpool. But, you know, they're just planning for that eventuality. But I think Diogo Jota is quite a big ask for him to replace a Salah or a Mane's output right now. But in a couple of years, who knows?
Well, it was an interesting thing, though, I was reading the other day. There's a football writer called Grace Robertson on Twitter who's written for StatsBomb before. And she is a Liverpool fan. And she said, I'm not sure what her source was for this, but she said that she'd read something a few years ago which basically said that Liverpool's aim with their squad rebuild was to win the league in 2019-20, win the league in 2020-21, then have 2 seasons where they'd have to rebuild. And, you know, obviously they try and do as well as they could, but if they finished much lower in the league, that would be acceptable to the board. And then they try and win the league again 3 seasons from now. Really? I mean, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, it does make sense, right? And it suggests that they did have this plan in mind, that they were like, look, in the summer of 2021, we're going to have 3 forwards who I think will all be 29 or thereabouts. Firmino might be a little bit older. And at that point, we accept that we're going to have to sell one of them. In fact, we kind of want to sell one of them. That's the thing that I think people don't necessarily get, that they will probably want to sell one of them to then fund the next iteration of this side. And obviously, you know, Wijnaldum's contract runs out then. If he doesn't go before then, Henderson is getting on. Milner played under 1,000 minutes last season. Lallana's gone. So a lot of the squad players are turning over already. That to me kind of suggests that we would expect Jota to be a rotation player this season, but that next season he may well be a starter in a slightly different looking side. You know, maybe they go to a 4-2-3-1 and they do keep everyone, but maybe they do sell one of their stars. I kind of agree with you that actually, I wonder, it depends how smart the teams around them are, because I think that a few years ago you'd have said, if you are hoping to sell one of them to fund that next team, I think that 5 years ago that would have been really easy to do. You'd have been like, we're going to have 3 stars who'll be all 29. Somebody will definitely come in with a massive offer for one of them and we'll be able to sell them. But now, as good as those players are, I wonder if somebody will offer Liverpool an amount worth taking.
Yeah.
Like I could see people saying, look, we love Sadio Mane. He is one of the best wide players in the world, but he's 29 and you're willing to sell him. Are we going to give you 100 million for him? I don't know if teams will do that anymore. And I think if Liverpool don't get an offer kind of like significantly above the sort of 70 mark, then Liverpool would probably say, well, actually, he's worth more to us just to keep him for a couple of years, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like in the last couple of years, particularly with Mbappe and Sancho and now Haaland, etc., like players are really, really good, much younger than they were 5 or 6 years ago. So if you're a Real Madrid, why would you target Salah or Mane over Mbappe or Sancho? It doesn't make any financial sense. So yeah, I think you're quite right that maybe Liverpool will be in a position where they don't get that big money move for one of their top stars, but I think they're just planning for that eventuality in case they do, and it's just more smart work from Michael Edwards and his team.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what they do, because they have got all the major decisions right along the way. So yeah. I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt on this, but I am still intrigued because there are plenty of teams that have shown they're really, really good at building good sides, but then how they move on from those good sides and build the next one, that's a little bit more difficult to say. Let's talk about centre-back, last thing, because to me, this is the last really significant area of need. As we said, Fabinho's played centre-back. Hasn't seemed to be a problem. Yes, they conceded 3 goals to Leeds, but I don't think that was necessarily because of breakdowns in the centre-back line quite so much as maybe the midfield, where it was a little bit too easy to play through them. Against Chelsea, it was a really dominant performance, obviously helped by that red card. But Lovren was sold in the summer, and in that Chelsea game, there wasn't a single centre-back on the bench, which is a little bit concerning.
Yeah.
So the current major rumour on the market is that Liverpool are after Schalke centre-back Ozan Kabak. He's Turkish, he's 20 years old. I think he's played a season and a half in the Bundesliga now.